So, the biggest battles right now in the field of consciousness are being fought between the so-called materialists and the so-called consciousness realists. There are three things that are being argued about. Is the universe all physical? That's called materialistic monism. It's all matter. The second is dualism. There's mind and matter. So mind and matter, dualism, goes back to Descartes, and that is getting out of fashion. Nobody believes in it anymore, because if there is mind and matter, then what's the mediator? Does it violate the laws of thermodynamics? How does intention become a molecule? It's lots of problems. So just for the sake of brevity, the dualistic model is out. There is the materialistic model. It's all matter. And then there's the third model, which I'm sympathetic to. It's all consciousness. Okay? Matter is an epiphenomenon. It's a byproduct. And actually, the deeper reality doesn't even exist, because what we call matter is sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. That's what we experience. Then we objectify that experience into a perceptual object, and it said it's there. But in fact, it's an expression of our consciousness. So that's how we got started, because, to me...
That was a lot of emails.
There were a lot of emails. But, Rudy comes from a model anyway that's totally reductionist. Okay, reductionist means let's go smaller and smaller and smaller, and then we can put it all together and explain the whole. And that model works, by the way. You can find specific genes for Alzheimer's, as he told you, and you can develop drugs for those specific genes. But there comes a point where matter disappears, right? It disappears into particles which disappear into probability waves in a field of consciousness. Or in a field of, I won't say consciousness, in some field somewhere. Okay, so that's how we got started. And then we did the meditation study, which was principally looking in the beginning at telomerase. And then you started to look at the genes. So I'd like, I did mention a little bit, but can we summarize a little bit about what you and your colleagues, Eric Schott and others, found?
Sure. So in the beginning, it was a simple study just to ask what is the effect of meditation, but also just relaxation at a resort, eliminating stress and worry biologically on your system. And when we saw this 40% increase in telomerase in those who were meditating versus those who were just at the resort, we were pretty astonished. We didn't expect, scientists are used to small changes, but having done it enough times that it's statistically significant. This was 40% increase in 4 days. We said, well, let's see what else is happening. Let's see what's happening at the level of all gene activity. And this is when we decided to team up with Eric Schott, who actually was here, I think, for the Aspen Ideas Week recently. He's an amazing guy, bioinformaticist, genomicist. And we started to look. There are about 19,000 genes. They make up about 3% of your DNA. So a lot of that, the rest of the DNA is kind of like the universe. It's 4% of the universe is baryonic, where we can see it. The other stuff we can't see. In the genome, 3 or 4% is genes, and the rest is intergenic, and it's basically controlling and modulating those genes. It used to be called junk DNA. It's anything but junk. So we said, let's look at all these different genes, and each gene can make many different types of proteins. So there are probably about 300,000 proteins that can be made by different RNA transcripts from 19,000 or so genes. Let's look at all of them. So this was a big study. And the way we do this is we can group those genes up into categories by function in the body, which ones are involved with homeostasis and fluid balance, wound healing, inflammation, on and on. And people have cataloged these genes in this way. And what we found, again, if we wanted to make up results that we would love, we probably would not have been this ridiculous. Seriously, we said, a 17-fold increase in wound healing genes. When you're a kid, a little kid gets a cut, they heal in no time, like a day or two. When you get older, you get a cut, it's still there for a week or so. The genes that control wound healing go up 17-fold. in all age-related diseases that threaten healthy aging, where health span doesn't keep up with lifespan, whether it's cancer, heart disease, diabetes, stroke, Alzheimer's disease. As I mentioned this morning in my talk, the original pathology just gets you to the point where there's inflammation. And inflammation is what really takes you out, including when you have an MI, when you have a heart attack. It's inflammation that's really hurting you. It's the plaque and the buildup that gets you to that point. So what we saw was this, again, up to about a 20-fold decrease in every single gene that makes these molecules like cytokines and proteins that promote inflammation. Now, what was also cool was that the people who were just at the resort, we had to have control group, right? So you had somebody eating the same food, enjoying the resort, but not doing the meditation course. They had benefit too. They had benefit in the same direction as the meditators, but the meditators just had more than the resort people. So even if you didn't meditate, just going to a resort and chilling out and not stressing out, it changes your genetics. It's changing your epigenetics. And this is really important because epigenetics, and I think we heard some of this today, you're born with certain genes that predispose you towards certain behaviors and traits and diseases. But as you live your life, you acquire, like Lamarck said, you acquire new genetic traits. You're acquiring changes to your DNA, methylation, acetylation, little genes that make microRNAs that go, it's not protein, genes that just make microRNAs that go and regulate other genes that make proteins. These are all epigenetic changes. But what's fascinating is that in a variety of different species, even mice that have been looked at, epigenetic changes can get inherited by the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. So if you think about this, how you're living your life, your stress level, your addictions, your phobias, the things you're doing well, as you change your genome, modifying genes and modifying activity, you pass them on to your kids. This is what it predicts. I mean, we haven't seen direct evidence of this in humans yet, but if it's happening in water fleas and in mice, we're not that different. I mean, our DNA is pretty similar to a mouse. Only 10 genes distinguish us from a chimpanzee. So we're one big family on this planet, one big evolution of DNA. And I just want to mention, want to talk about the epigenetic experiments. I think, you saw a slide this morning of the Dutch famine. And in the Dutch famine in the 40s, the kids who were born to those people who were starving were prone to obesity and diabetes. And the hypothesis is they had, as these people were starving, they were modifying genes to get more bang for their buck out of their food, right? Or maybe they were modifying genes to want to try to find more food and eat more food. Not sure what. This is still being studied. But those kids and next generation were prone to obesity and diabetes who came from those starving parents. So there was recently a paper that just came out in one of the Nature journals where they did the experiment. They took mice, they starved the mice, okay, and then they followed out 3 generations of the mice that were born to those mice. And guess what? Generation 1, obesity and diabetes. Generation 2, generation 3. So in that study, starve the parents, look at the next generations, they were prone to obesity and diabetes. One more study, and then we'll move on. They took mice and they had them smell a cherry smell. This was in Nature Neuroscience. And every time the mouse smelled the cherry smell, a particular type of cherry smell, they gave a foot shock to the mouse. So the mouse got a shock and his foot didn't like it. So now the mice really didn't like the smell of cherries. It's like, oh, no, not the cherries again, right? So now these mice are being, so now the idea is that genetically, are you modifying their genes to remember cherry smell? My foot hurts. So these mice then have baby mice. The next generations come around, and guess what? The next generation of mice freak out when they smell cherries. This is an acquired trait during life of a mouse that changed a gene that was inherited so that now the next generation inherits the consequences of the lifestyle and life exposures of the parents. Think about the implications of that, right? It's pretty amazing. And then if you go further, they looked at the gene that makes the olfactory receptor for that cherry smell. They knew what the gene was, and sure enough, it was modified. It was epigenetically modified. So these are the type of data. There are more stories, but these are the type of data that are starting to come out were the Darwinians who want to say, we're just blowing in the wind, we're just genes randomly blowing in the wind, and we'll see what sticks. You have no choice. You think with your lifestyle, you think if you listen to that Chopra guy, you're going to change your life. Good luck. It's all random, and it takes millions of years, right? We put up with a lot of that. But now the evidence is coming out that, in fact, it's not just random. It's not just Darwin. There's a little bit of truth in what Lamarck said. Our lifestyles affect our genetics at the level of epigenetics. And that led us to our project.
So to summarize that project, gene expression, including cell biology, cell aging, cytokines, homeostasis, self-regulation, inflammation were all modified just by meditation. Okay, now, what's the next step? We said the next step is what we call self-directed biological transformation initiative. In short, the acronym is SBTI, Self-Directed Biological Transformation Initiative. Where does this take us? It takes us to the next step. When I introduced you to the body as a process, I said, what is the process? It's eating. So it's not just what you eat, but how you're feeling when you're eating. Okay, so if you're angry and upset or feeling jealousy when you're eating and churning out lots of cortisol and adrenaline, your food will be metabolized in a different metabolic pathway than if you've said grace, if you've said thanks, if you've expressed your gratitude, and if you eat in a manner that gives you joy, mindfully. And if you're aware of the sensual nature of food, the smell, the texture, the color, and the joy that comes from eating. So it's not just what you eat. You know, I had read a study in Science in the year 1980. And at that time, I was really, oh, wow, this is amazing. So the study was that experimenters were giving these poor mice food that was high in cholesterol. And then to their surprise, they found that there was one group of rabbits that did not get the high cholesterol levels. Okay, and they actually even looked at the arteries, and they didn't have the same degree of atherosclerosis. In fact, it was 60% less. Or you can check out the study. It's in Science in 1980. So what did they find? They found that the technician who was feeding these rabbits, instead of throwing the food at them, he would take them out of their cages and he would pet them. He would cuddle them. Then he would even sing to them, and he would feed them the same poisonous food. But now, they didn't get the elevation or the same degree of elevation and hardening of the arteries. And the only difference was petting and cuddling and singing a song, okay, because the food was metabolized into a different metabolic pathway. Now we can see the epigenetics of that. It's not just what you eat, but the awareness with which you eat and the attitude with which you eat. If you eat with gratitude and mindful awareness. And then, of course, what you eat is important. You know, if your food is full of petroleum products, which is most manufactured food, most processed food, it's like putting Agent Orange into your food, okay? And then if it's totally refined with all this high degree of sugar, and you know, I hesitate to say this because the data is not in, but it will be in. If it's genetically modified, it's going to mess up with the ecosystem in your GI tract, which is the microbiome, which is 90% of your DNA. Okay, so we are looking at not only how you eat, but what you eat. Okay, but then I also mentioned eating, breathing. There are 108 pranayama techniques. You experienced a little bit of information about some of the most popular ones this morning, right? There are 108 pranayama techniques which modulate your biology in one of 108 ways. Bhastrika, which is bellows breath, alternate nostrils, ujjayi breathing. It's a whole science that has not been explored. What are these breathing techniques doing to your sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, your microbiome, which is 90% of your DNA?
Epigenetics. And your epigenetics.
And your epigenetics. So eating, breathing, digestion. You know, in Ayurveda, which is the science of healing that I was subsequently, after my training in neuroendocrinology, happened to get trained in Ayurveda, digestion is the most important thing. And now I understand why. 90% of your DNA is in that microbiome. So digestion becomes very important, okay? And then metabolism, then elimination, then the 5 senses, how we're experiencing the 5 senses. This is the sensory input: sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. And then emotional well-being, conscious communication. Before you speak, you ask, is it necessary? Is it useful? Is it kind? Is it compassionate? Does it create happiness in the listener? Then you speak, etc., etc. So, you know, how you speak, how you think, how you feel, what you imagine, what is your intention, is all modifying your biological activity. That's what our project is now. That Rudy and Mount Sinai, Eric Schott, etc., are looking at. And we are going to basically say, 24-hour period, what do we do? And how do we do it? And how does this change our biology, cell aging, telomerase, telomere length, etc.?
We'll also be looking at epigenetic changes, at gene activity again. We'll be looking at inflammatory markers like cytokines. We'll be looking at the amyloid beta protein that initiates Alzheimer's, like I mentioned this morning. We'll also be looking at a huge amount of lipids and what are called metabolomics, how your biomarkers of your metabolism. And we'll be looking at the microbiome. So, I mean, we're just going for it at this time. So a protocol of the greatest lifestyle you can imagine, plus meditation, massage, yoga. Let's just see everything we can with today's technology of what happens in the body after a week of that. So that's the next study, which is the SBTI.
Yes, and also when you look at the healing traditions, massage, you see there are oils, there are herbs. When you look at the digestives that are taken, whether it's ginger or any of the other digestives like Triphala, which is the 3 Ayurvedic fruits, it's becoming apparent that they're not only adaptogens, but adaptogens means they modulate at the level of cell biology, the response to stress, but they also change the microbiome. And you can think of your microbiome in just one of 2 ways, or your whole biology, really. One extreme inflammation, and the other extreme self-regulation or homeostasis.
So Deepak, in terms of time, if we want to have time for about a 20-minute meditation, and we still want to get about 20 minutes of Q&A about everything we presented, maybe we can do some Q&A now.
Excellent. Again, I don't have a watch, so.
Sorry? It's almost 4:20, so now. So let's do it, and then after the Q&A, you can do the meditation.
Okay. So how much time do we have?
You have 40 minutes.
Okay, that's good. We have 20 and 20, so let's do that. And
I keep track of time more than Deepak does. So.
So, do we have some mics that we can get out?
We can repeat your question if you want to.
Or we can repeat the question, yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to hear the conscious communication again, if you could go over that, because I think that was fabulous.
Okay, so conscious communication, you know, it comes from, actually the original comes from the Buddha, okay? And the Buddha said, stop before you react to any situation. Okay, and I'm modifying this now as the STOP formula. So S stands for stop, T stands for take 3 deep breaths. And while you're taking the 3 deep breaths, you smile everywhere in your body, from your fingernails to your toenails, to your genitalia, to your hair follicles, heart, and everywhere. While you're doing the 3 deep breaths, then observe your reaction to react. Observe your reaction to react, and that's O, S-T-O, and then P, proceed with loving kindness, compassion, and awareness. So that's the first step. That's true for any situation. It's not just conscious communication. Okay, your phone rings, don't pick it up. Stop, take 3 deep breaths, smile and then pick up the phone and say hello. Okay, it's a different energy, okay?
You may need a new voicemail, though. I may miss your call, because currently I'm stopped. I'm taking 3 deep breaths.
Now, the second thing is conscious communication. It says before you speak ever, because, you know, one of the 8 limbs of Buddha's teaching, you know, he says there are the 4 noble truths. First is there's suffering. The second is suffering is has causes, which is the separate ego self. Third is there are 8 ways to get out of suffering. Out of the 8 ways, one is conscious communication, right speech. Okay? So he says that's the path to enlightenment. So conscious communication is stop and say, before you speak, is it necessary? Is it true? Is it useful? Is it kind and loving? Will it create happiness in the listener? And also part of that would be what is called conscious communication. Also part of that is what is called non-violent communication, which means observe the situation, look what you're feeling, ask yourself why you're feeling that way, what is the need that you have, and then ask yourself what is the best way to fulfill that need. So it's becoming more and more expanding our consciousness, even in communication. Okay, somewhere there.
This is in your book also.
It's in one of the books, I don't know.
In Superbrain, there's THNK, so think before you speak.
In Superbrain.
THNK, true, helpful, necessary, kind. Same idea.
Oh, sorry.
So think before you, THNK.
With your research with the SBTI program, what's the time frame for gaining the results of that? And do you see an opportunity for that program becoming accessible for others, or a program that lay people could apply and utilize in their life?
Well, why don't you start with the protocol, and then I'll go to the analysis.
We're doing the program in 3 segments. So 25 subjects and 25 controls. That's happening in 2 weeks. Then in October, we're doing the same thing. And then in December, we're doing the same thing. So it's 75 subjects following this protocol, all those measurements, and 75 controls. Once we have that, I think we can make it available to everyone. We don't need to replicate it. Others can replicate it. But the protocol will be there. And in fact, Gina, you hear, she has the idea. Gina, she stepped out. Well, she has the idea to make Aspen the city of well-being, offering these protocols through yoga and bringing all these things there.
So I'll comment on the analysis. So we'll receive the samples. We'll be doing all these epigenetic, gene expression, everything. So generating the data from the samples and processing would take probably a month or 2. But analyzing the data, because it's so much data and the CPU time is limiting in terms of crunching this amount of data, this could take another 2 or 3 months. But the goal at the end, for example, from the gene activity table is, if you picture 250,000 products of genes from all your genes as little dots in a circle. And if the gene activity is high, it's, let's say, red. If the gene activity is low, it's, let's say, green. So now you're going to get a color chart. So then, and in the circle, there's the genes for inflammation here, and there are the genes for wound healing here. So we know in the circle where different pathways and systems are. So what's going to happen is you're going to see patterns of color and shapes that correlate with wellness. Eric has one that correlates with people who have a placebo effect during a drug trial, no matter what the drug is. We're calling them wellness profiles. We'll understand later with these genes going up and down how it works. But for now, let's say we have that information. We want to make Aspen the city of wellness. Everybody gets a test just to see where they are right now. We check all of you. And we look at your gene activity. And we compare your circle and patterns and colors to the one that correlates with optimal wellness. And then you'll see where you are. And maybe by looking at these patterns and where they are, give you advice about what you need to do more of. That's going to be the future. Yeah, it's going to be cool.
How do you see this relating to addiction? We have so much weight.
Can I?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So you heard brilliant talks on addiction this morning. I think one sentence I came away with is, addiction is the memory of pleasure which is no longer pleasurable. You can't get enough of what you don't want anymore, okay? So that's why addiction is such a difficult problem to treat, because that memory is encoded somewhere in your networks or even beyond that. We don't know where, and you're hooked to a memory. even though you're not experiencing any pleasure anymore. So our approach to addictions, and by the way, we do have an addiction center in British Columbia and Canada, where we use our techniques to treat patients with addiction. Our approach to addiction is you cannot erase the memory. It's impossible. So how do you create a new memory which is more pleasurable? Okay, and for that we use everything from yoga to meditation to massage to music to joy to poetry to you name it, sensory modulation.
Go ahead.
So when you're doing this experiment, you're taking the people who are not going through the process and the people who are going through the process, and then you're going to look at their gene expression, their RNA expression, and you're gonna compare the two, and you're gonna see differences. And there's going to be many things going on. They're going to have different diets, I would imagine, even, right?
Yeah, diet is very important. So actually, 1 week before you come, we suggest a lighter diet, more in
But the two groups will have different diets. They'll
Yeah,
be more mindful of what
the other group's just at the resort, just
Excuse me?
enjoying the resort. They're
They
not-
can do what they want.
Yeah,
They
they're
can
not
go
going
to the,
through this wellness program.
I guess what I'm leading up to is when you do a study and one group is becoming the mindful group and the other group is the control group, and they might be changing their diets, and diets change gene expression right off the bat.
We're not taking a reductionist approach because we're saying it's all of the above.
Oh, I understand. Then later on,
Yeah.
you wiggle back and see
Yeah.
what did it.
And we're going to be looking at how much change there is in all these different measures, epigenetics, genetics, microbiome, lipids, A beta, cytokines, you name it. And then based on how big those changes are, that would tell us how many more rounds of this we have to do to get statistical significance to say this is what matters. These are the patterns you want to see to know that right now you're on your way to wellness or not, or you're living a healthy life.
Okay, so you can get all the information on the study if you go to choprafoundation.org, and we are actually, as of this moment, creating a website about the study as it goes on, and so you can decide whether you want to participate, in what way, etc. We've definitely set out 3 slots. The first study that's going to happen in 2 weeks, we probably have only 3 or 4 people now that can participate more, but there are openings in the future, and it's all the information is there. Chopra Foundation. Neural feedback. There's a lot of experience with neural feedback, and I'm not the best expert in that, but we do use neural feedback at our center, mainly EEG neural feedback. And it's very fascinating that within a few minutes of meditation and introducing a certain intention, you can see the shift from, we can talk a little bit about Dreamweaver, for example.
Yeah. We should also talk about what Eric Topol's going to be doing in the
Yeah,
project,
so
right?
why don't you mention?
Well, so we'll also be measuring things like this, like EEG, heart rate, galvanic skin response. And we'll be doing remote quantitation of these measures with a collaboration with Eric Topol at Scripps. So it's not purely just neurofeedback, but we'll get outcome measures that will give us the same type of information.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
We are doing that.
So that actually, I'm glad you asked that, because we forgot to mention that very important component of the study. There's a question here.
Yes, I have a question about telomeres. Can telomeres determine life expectancy? And if you live a conscious lifestyle, can you actually change the telomeres in your genes?
So, well, at the cellular level, telomere length predicts when a cell will become senescent and die. Translating that to a whole body is a little bit more difficult, but basically, if you're keeping your cells healthy, healthier, you can expect that you're going to have a longer health span and just in a longer lifespan. What we have seen is that meditation had its dramatic effect on the activity of the enzyme telomerase that makes those telomeres longer. So in this, it's mind-blowing, but in this study, meditation led to longer telomeres, which means those cells are going to stay healthier a longer time, which should be beneficial for the body. So we have...
Neurofeedback, I have been using it in my practice. We have seen change. As a matter of fact, we talked of that.
Can you wait for the mic? Because I don't think anybody can hear.
Oh, sure. I have been using EEG biofeedback. And not only this, we have seen change of rewiring of the neuro pathways and helping the patient avoid craving as well as PTSD as well, many other things. Not only this, but we utilize, you mentioned massage. One of the issues of massage is touch of another individual, of another being. That conveys enormous amount of energy that he is devoid otherwise. And the other thing that we use is acupuncture as well, one of the modalities. So all these things we are using in the office.
Earlier, there we go. Dr. Tanzi, you talked about Alzheimer's as being a loss of self, and that is reverberating a lot, of course, with Dr. Chopra's discussion. It's a lot of richness in there. I don't know if you might have some thoughts on that, but I also had a more specific question, which was how meditation helps Alzheimer's patients. What is the process in that, and in what ways specifically does it help?
Well, we haven't, of course it's tough to do meditation with an Alzheimer's patient. Maybe in the earlier or prodromal states you can try that. I don't think it's been tried. But, during meditation, if you're quite advanced at it, you can get to past just concentration to contemplation. I'm sure when Deepak meditates, he can get down to that delta wave state of, it's equivalent of when you're in slow wave sleep, but you're awake. It turns out that during delta wave existence, at that EEG state, you turn off amyloid production, and you also start to turn on enzymes that clear amyloid. This is work of David Holtzman at WashU. Papers published in Science and Nature, really good stuff. So getting into a delta state is good for you. And Deepak was going to just talk about, we developed actually a device for that purpose. We'd like to actually try it in PTSD, but it's meant to use music, ambient electronic music, which I write and record, and a light show, and which you're hearing pleasant music, you're seeing different colored lights, you have your eyelids closed, so you're seeing the lights. And what you don't know is while you're listening, the light and the music are coordinated, synchronized, to slowly bring you down from alpha, beta, 12 beats, slowly down to 10, 9, 8, down to theta, somewhere around 6 or 7, all the way down to delta, which puts me to sleep, actually. The delta program puts me to sleep, which is a good thing if I can't sleep. But the theta program, it really refreshes you. And we've actually tested this. We had a neurologist in my lab who saw these on my desk, and he said, what's that? And he was making fun of it and saying it's all woo-woo and hokey. So I said, let's go. Let's go to the EEG lab at Lunda Building, and we're going to hit you up. We'll see what happens. So we gave him the theta program, and this was the best experiment you could do. The guy's a complete cynic. And he was wearing the glasses, and he's hearing my music, and we had the video camera going, just like a regular EEG experiment. It was an experimental lab, following his EEG. 9 minutes in, right when it was supposed to happen, instead of being all this asynchronous alpha-beta activity, it was crazy. It was almost perfect theta synchrony, front, back, left, right. Now, it's an N of 1. It's anecdotal. It's one guy. But he came out, and we showed that to him, and he starts laughing because he thought that we were playing a joke on him. And he said, this is somebody in a coma. We said, no, we actually had to play the videotape and show him that it really was him. And he was awake, he saw, but he was able to acquire theta synchrony. So we're hoping that maybe if we can get a device like this to get you down to delta, and you're not able to meditate down to delta, or you can't get enough slow wave sleep because of sleep issues, this might be able to help get some of that delta state, and maybe we could use that therapeutically. So it's called Dreamweaver, the Dreamweaver, and actually the Deepak Chopra Dreamweaver, yes.
Can I make? So you talked earlier about the fact that the brain, through life, some people say the brain is aging, and you said that you think it's developing through life. Is there a component in this program that you have that might provide tools for myelination or increased brain activity or becoming, retarding the aging process at the same time that you're enhancing brain development?
We'll do the meditation just now. We'll do a meditation just now.
I think that's
but you're not looking at myelin, you're looking at the whole picture. Myelin is part of the picture. But the fact is, neurogenesis and synaptogenesis are now accepted as legitimate terms, which means you can increase the number of neurons and increase the number of connections between neurons.
So I think the idea is that basically it's the continuation of a developmental program of the brain, rather than thinking that the brain has to go downhill. It's a perspective change that, the brain's changing your whole life, but how can we allow those changes to occur in a healthier manner that promote more neurogenesis, neural network revision for healthier living, more synaptic activity? More synapses, I think I said it earlier, synaptic reserve for retirement is as important as financial reserve. Okay, you have to save up both synapses and funds for retirement because synapses are what protect you. You have to,
We now have time for the 20-minute meditation.
okay. So, okay.
Okay, thanks.
Do you mind if I sit here and do it?
No.
It's more comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, in 20 minutes, we're going to actually be tourists of the whole brain. Okay? And we have already kind of assumed that the reptilian brain, we can, in a way, deactivate it unless we are in an emergency since you asked the question, by conscious communication and what we refer to as the STOP formula, right? Stop. Take 3 deep breaths, smile, observe, proceed with love, compassion, and awareness. And the more you are doing that, the more you're overriding your reactivity. So we're not going to engage with that part. And now what we're going to do is we're going to visit our limbic brain and our cortical brain in order to have an integrated brain for not only optimal health and homeostasis, but setting the stage for higher consciousness, okay? Now here's the key. The practice itself is very mechanical, so don't try to figure out whether you're doing it right or wrong or anything. Okay, we're just going to do it mechanically, and if you are diligent about it, remember I told you there are 8 things that the Buddha said about the Eightfold Path to Enlightenment, and I mentioned right communication, right speech as one of them. So the others are right perspective, where he says right perspective is either no perspective or all perspectives, which basically means non-judgment, okay? Right thinking, which is reflection. Right emotions, which are love, compassion, joy, equanimity. Okay? Right livelihood, not destroying the ecosystem. He was a very advanced thinker. Okay? What did I leave out? Right meditative practice, which we're going to do now, which is in his language called vipassana, and right mindfulness. Now, mindfulness has become such a popular term that most people really don't know the complexity of it. Mindfulness of what? 5 senses, body, inside the body, mental space, relationship. Mindfulness is a huge discipline. So now, since we have only 20 minutes, 15? Okay, so in 15 minutes?
No, you got 20.
Okay. Okay, so let's start. We'll just go through it, okay? Put your feet on the ground, so don't cross your legs. Keep your hands open, preferably comfortably on your lap, and let your fingers point upward, okay? Sit relatively erect. Use the backrest so you're comfortable. The most important thing is comfort. Okay, now let's close our eyes. And let's begin by simply observing the breath, knowing that our breath is always in the present moment. The breath is never in the future or the past. That's why it is the movement of spirit or consciousness. So just observe your breath as it goes in, as it goes out through your nostrils. If you become aware of any other sensations or noise, feelings, just very effortlessly return to observing your breath. And now allow your mind to become one with your breath. Allow your mind to settle into your breath, knowing that the movement of mind and the movement of breath are both the same thing, the movement of consciousness. Let your mind and your breath be one. And now bring your awareness into your heart, in the middle of your chest. Keep it there. And we ask ourselves the first question: who am I? Ask the question and then let it go. And allow any sensations, images, feelings, or thoughts to come to you. Ask and receive. Who am I? Who am I? Again, allowing anything to come to you. Now let's ask the second question: what do I want? Allowing any sensation, image, feeling, or thought to come to you. What do I want? What do I want? What do I want? Now let's move to the third question. What is my purpose? What do I want? To what purpose? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? Final question. What am I grateful for? What am I grateful for? Allowing any thoughts to come to you. Let's move from reflection to evoking divine emotions. Evoke the emotion of love through a memory of love, and then feel it. Evoke the feeling of love through a memory of love. And now evoke the experience of compassion. Perhaps think of someone who is in pain or suffering, feel what they feel, and evoke the desire to make a difference. Experience compassion. And now evoke the feeling of joy through a memory of the joyful child that you still are. Joy. The joyful child in you. Memory. And finally, equanimity. The equanimity that comes from getting in touch with the center of stillness within. The stillness behind your thoughts. Equanimity. Peace. Now we'll move into pratyahara, which is going within. And we'll just choose one part of our body. So become aware of your heart. And see if you can feel your heartbeat. Just have that intention that you can feel your heartbeat, and you should be able to feel it, either as a sound or a sensation. And now move your awareness into your fingertips and see if you can feel your heartbeat in your fingertips. The throbbing of your heart in your fingertips. And just know that that pulse of life is right this moment in all the cells of your body. Every cell in your body is pulsing with life. So bring your awareness into your entire body and feel it with just that one thought. Life is pulsing. Every cell of the body, the light of awareness, the light of consciousness. Perfect balance, perfect integration, perfect harmony, pure consciousness in every cell of the body. Just feel the body. Okay, now please start mentally repeating your full name. So if I was doing it, I'd say, I'm Deepak Chopra, I'm Deepak Chopra, I'm Deepak Chopra, I'm Rudy Tanzi. Just repeat your full name to yourself. I am, full name. Now drop your last name, just repeat your first name. I'm Deepak, I'm Rudy, I'm Glenda, I'm Gina. Just your first name. Now drop your first name, so just keep repeating, I am. If you want, aham, I am. And now drop the I am and just rest in being. Rest in being. Rest in existence. Rest in awareness. Rest in being, existence, awareness. Just rest in being. Okay, you can now relax into your body. If you want to move or stretch or yawn or whatever, take a minute and open your eyes. When you've opened your eyes, I just want to give you a short explanation so it makes a little bit of sense to you. So we sit in a comfortable position. Never make a fist. Fist is tightness. Keep your hands open. And then the first thing is start with breath awareness. And just bringing your awareness into your breath will put you in the present moment. And then just, casually ask your mind to settle into your breath. 2-3 minutes. And by the way, just doing this, the whole cortical brain, you can see coherence. Coherence means that the brain waves frequency and phase lock in. They synchronize. Just this. Okay, so we did that for 2-3 minutes, and then we went straight to awareness in this area, and we asked 4 questions. Now, according to the spiritual tradition of Vedanta, these are the 4 most important questions of our existence. Who am I? What do I want? What's my purpose? And what am I grateful for? So who am I slowly expands as you ask the question. Who am I? Could be my body, my emotions, my mind, my relationship. But as you do this, you'll have epiphanies into just that one question. Who am I? The second question is, what do I want? And the answer you will see will change. The answer will be, I want success, I want ambition, I want to publish a paper, I want to have a healthy body, whatever, which is all great, but then that will also change. I want truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, service, relationship, higher consciousness, intuition, insight, creativity, imagination, being in touch with the source. So who am I will change. What do I want will change by itself, if you do it. The third question was, what's my purpose? Because if I want something, it must have some purpose. And you'll see that too will change. And the purpose will evolve as our consciousness evolves. And the fourth question is, what am I grateful for? It's basically opening the door to what the spiritual traditions call abundance consciousness. So the more you open the door, the wider it becomes, the more abundance it brings into your life. Okay, now when we do this self-reflection, it's the prefrontal cortex that's getting activated, and you can see that. Then we went on to emotions, and I just went with 4 emotions. Why? Because these, again, in the tradition, are called divine emotions. So the emotions that connect us to life are called divine emotions, and the emotions that disconnect us from life are called diabolical emotions. Okay, so divine emotions are love, compassion, joy, equanimity. Diabolical emotions are hostility, fear, anxiety, hostility, anger, fear, guilt, shame, and depression. And there's a whole kind of science behind how they come, why we experience these, which we're not going to do now. So we favor the divine emotions just by evoking them. And how do we evoke them? Through memory. We've all had the feelings sometime. Okay, when you do that, your limbic brain gets activated, and there's limbic resonance. And the next thing will be to look at neuropeptides, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, all kinds of things. The dance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. As you know, when you're in fight-flight, it's your sympathetic nervous system. And when you're in these modes, then it's the parasympathetic nervous system. And one of the ways to monitor that is also heart rate variability and brain waves, and now these new technologies. So we went into that. Then I asked you to do something interesting, which is the first step in pratyahara. Pratyahara means becoming aware of what's happening in your body. So I asked you to become aware of your heartbeat. How many people could actually feel it? Quite amazing, huh? And then I asked you to feel your heartbeat in your fingertips. How many people could feel that? Okay, just that moment, by the way, your sympathetic, your parasympathetic nervous system increased its activity, your heart rate variability increased, and your blood pressure dropped. Okay, why? Because you're diverting blood into your hands from your cerebral cortex. You're changing the activity of your parasympathetic. There are procedures in the yoga teachings called kriyas and bandhas that combine this intentionality with breathing that allow you to actually navigate your entire body. Okay, we just did heart, but you can go into your abdominal space, you can go into your chest space, you can go into your mental space, you can go into your relational space, your relationships. And all by going within the universe within, okay? So pratyahara, we don't know which part of the brain is activated, but we are learning a little bit about it. I was at an American Heart Failure Association meeting recently, and they said when we did the technique that we did just now, your insula gets activated. And in fact, now, of course, they're coining new terms. So the part that got activated just now when you're feeling your heartbeat is now being called the cardunculus. Okay, the cardunculus, which is a group of neurons in your insula. But we'll see now, that's how we do. We give names to these parts of the brain, and then we think they're real. And, but they're all part of an integrated system in consciousness. That's what they are. But anyway, you did activate your insula just now. Okay, then what did we do? We did an exercise in transcendence. We didn't have enough time, but I did it, and I think you did it. So what you do is you start with your full name. That's my ego self. And when you do that enough, you'll see it'll bring out all your personal history. Deepak Chopra is a personal history that consciousness has assumed. Then what I did was I said, drop your last name, Deepak. Now Deepak brings out another part of my personal history, which is the boy, what my parents called me. It's a bigger identity, by the way, because it's more innocent. The personal history is always, reputation, this, that, what do people think of me, etc. I have to protect it. The boy is more vulnerable, Deepak. Then we dropped that, and it was just I am. That's our common identity, isn't it? Moses at the burning bush asked God, who are you? He says, I am that I am. Jesus, before Abraham was, I am. Then we finally drop that. And then when we drop all labels, all definitions, all evaluations, all judgments, what's left? Being. Existence. The common ground of all existence. The self of the individual, which is also the self of the universe. Now this, in the traditions I come from, is called pure consciousness. Why is it called pure consciousness? Because it hasn't taken on labels. Okay, this is the awareness that was there when you were a baby, before it took on experiences. Now, from the little bit we know, again, by looking at pure consciousness, it seems to have the following 5 qualities. It's a field of pure potential. So you take a baby born in a gutter in Calcutta, adopted by a family in Boston, and is now a professor at Harvard Medical School. What happened? That pure consciousness evolved in that direction. Okay, it's the epigenetics that influenced that pure consciousness. So pure consciousness is a field of all possibilities. It is a field of correlation. It correlates every experience in life and then transforms that into a biological response. A correlative field. Another word for this is synchronicity. Okay, because synchronicity means many things happening simultaneously, which is your body. You know, a human body can think thoughts, play a piano, kill germs, remove toxins, make a baby all at the same time, right? While your biological rhythms are tracking the movement of stars and planets. So synchronicity is the nature of the universe. It's also the nature of pure consciousness. The third thing is unpredictability. You know, if I asked you, there are very sophisticated ways of meditating, and one of them is wait for your next thought. And you'll see, you have no idea what it is going to be. Okay? It comes from the unknown, it returns to the unknown. But when you wait for it, it doesn't come. It's amazing. That's pure consciousness. So pure consciousness is all possibilities, synchronicity or correlation. It's also unpredictability. The fourth attribute of pure consciousness is it's creative. It's constantly evolving into new expressions of creativity, expressions, new contexts, new meanings, etc. And the fifth attribute of pure consciousness is it's imbued with the power of intention. So when our intentions come from this level, and the purest intentions literally are, what do I want, to what purpose, and who am I? The rest is left to the unknown. That's called karma yoga, okay? And it's the unfoldment of pure consciousness, which is the unfoldment of time, which is spontaneous. Okay, so that was the purpose of this meditation, to take you to pure consciousness of being, which is the highest level of intelligence. That's called Raj Yoga. The second highest level of intelligence is feeling or emotion, the divine emotions. The third highest level of intelligence is the intellect, but not the ego intellect, but the intellect that asks, who am I, what do I want, what's the purpose? And the fourth level is action. So being, feeling, thinking, and acting. That's the sequence that should be, instead of our frenetic world where it is doing, 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 and then thinking, selfish thinking, feeling anxiety, and no being, zero. So we reverse the order. That's yoga. Really, that is yoga. Being is the window to the eternal. 5 other things that I just want to complete this. So my daily intention and daily practice is a joyful, energetic body, a loving, compassionate heart, a reflective mind, but alert, quiet, reflective, alert mind, and lightness of being, which these days psychologists are calling the state of flow. But the state of flow cannot happen unless you're willing to relinquish your personal history. So what another practice is, every night before you go to sleep, recapitulate the day and then let it go. Just let it go. It's already a dream. What happened this morning is a dream, right? So let it go. And that way you'll always be in the state of flow. Now there are other things you can do in sleep, but that's enough. Thank you.